Craving your next action-packed adventure? Audible delivers thrills of every kind on your command, like Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, where a lone astronaut must save humanity from extinction, narrated with stunning intensity by Ray Porter. From electrifying suspense and daring quest to spine-tingling horror and romance in far-off realms, unleash your adventurous side with gripping titles that'll keep you guessing. Discover exclusive Audible originals, hotly anticipated new releases, and must-listen bestsellers that hook you from the first minute. Because Audible knows there's no greater thrill than the one that speaks to you. Discover what lies beyond the edge of your seat. Start your free 30-day trial at audible.com/WonderyUS. That's audible.com/WonderyUS.
Thank you for turning to 10, your news leader. 10 News Conference with Gene Valicenti continues right now.
With my guest this morning, the Bristol County Sheriff Paul Heroux. He's a Democrat elected to the role in 2022. Boy, I remember you were running. Here we are, 3 years later.
Good to see you again.
You like the job?
It's a good job. Yeah, there's a lot of good work to be done. It's very different than being mayor because as mayor, I'm front and center in the community, but as sheriff, I'm in jail, out of sight, out of mind. Very few people think of me anymore. But
you were telling me in the break there's some of the same mayor, sheriff, it overlaps. You have complaints, personnel to deal with, unhappy people.
Yeah, 90% of my job as sheriff really is personnel issues because if you have good people doing the job well, the jail pretty much runs itself. So in addition to focusing on staffing issues and personnel issues, I deal with budgeting issues and infrastructure issues. So it's very similar. Just the content is different, but kind of the structure is the same.
Your predecessor made a big deal about his strong stance against illegal immigration. He was down at the border. He did a lot, and that is, he sort of left you with some of that on your plate. You don't deal with it as much. We're not at your office often to get your views on things. But let's talk a little bit about that because you're in law enforcement in Bristol County, Massachusetts, and Massachusetts was just designated by the government as a Homeland Security jurisdiction. Now, you have some news for us on that? You said that's changed?
Yeah, I was on a phone call on Friday afternoon, just past Friday, with about 50 other sheriffs from all over the country, and the National Sheriff's Association pushed back on the Department of Homeland Security, their designation on what is a sanctuary state or a sanctuary county or a sanctuary city. Some of the sheriffs who are on that list have a 287G contract. Some of the sheriffs on that list are being sued by the ACLU for their cooperation with ICE. And so the National Sheriff's Association could not make sense, heads or tails, of why this list was created the way it was. So they called into question the methodology.
Well, we'll see what comes of that. If there are changes, we're going to report that too. Right now we understand things have been taken off the official website of Homeland Security. Now let's just go over it. You've got about how many inmates?
We have about 700 inmates, just under 700.
Of them, how many are foreign nationals?
Probably about 60.
And of them, how many are on immigration detainers?
About 10.
And that's what you refer to as a 287G?
Well, no. So we are holding about 10 people on state charges, either awaiting trial or sentenced, for a state offense, not a federal offense. However, even though they're in there on a state offense, we cooperate with ICE. We give them lists of new admissions every day. We haven't stopped doing that. We're going to cooperate with ICE. We're not going to get in the way of doing their job. But we give them lists, and they then point out people on the list and ask us to put an ICE detainer on those people. So we don't have a 287G contract. We lost that under my predecessor. The federal government revoked that before I got there. So we are holding people on a state sentence, so we can't hold them exclusively on federal immigration violation. Okay.
Your predecessor was a conservative Republican. That was the Biden administration. Things have flipped. Okay. Now, just talk about this 287G. That comes into play when? Fill in the blank.
Okay, so a 287G contract trains and deputizes local and state law enforcement to assist ICE with either arrests or holding ICE detainees solely on the basis of ICE detention issues, like so an immigration violation. So out of the 3,000 sheriffs in the United States, last time I heard, only about 150 sheriffs have a 287G contract. Now, there are some places that might hold ICE detainees, again, on state sentence or state awaiting trial, like we have about 10 of them. But it has nothing, we're holding them, not because of their ICE status, but because of their state sentence.
I follow. If you're being compensated by the feds to hold them, that's a contract 287G, and if your people are going to help the feds when they do their business, you have detainees who are just, they got arrested for one reason or another in Massachusetts, they're being held.
Yes.
And once we dispose of them in the courts, however their case ends up, then immigration may grab them.
That's right.
They're on a detainer.
Yeah. So we have two different types of inmates in respect to this. We have people who are awaiting trial and people who are sentenced. If somebody is sentenced, we can tell ICE, this is when the person's going to be released. You can come over and get them at the time of release. Our SJC, Supreme Judicial Court, says we cannot hold them a minute longer than their sentence. So ICE better be there. And ICE does show up. Other times, though, if somebody's awaiting trial, we will tell ICE, you better get here and take them right away, because if they post bail, we cannot hold them. We're not legally allowed to hold them. We're still bound by our state laws.
So you have some deal of cooperation or some degree of cooperation with ICE. You just said that.
We cooperate with ICE. We're not going to get in their way.
You're only going to go so far. Because in the past you said, I'm the sheriff, we don't do raids. Don't come to me for stuff like that. Now, you're law enforcement. A lot has happened since all of this transpired. You've got ICE raids being made, and all of a sudden people are blocking them in the streets. Do you see that as a need for local law enforcement to maybe help keep the peace? Do you see any can you kick up a level of cooperation?
So we're not trained or deputized, and not only do we are not trained or deputized, we don't have the staff to do that. Some of our officers are being forced to do overtime 3 times a week. So if we were to also engage in like ICE, like assisting ICE on the street, we would be forcing them to do even more overtime. So we're not trained in deputizing, we just don't have the staff to do it. The U.S. Attorney in Boston, Attorney Foley, has actually told me and the other sheriffs, she said, we don't want you doing our job. Just don't get in our way. And I never encourage anybody to get in the way of ICE from doing their job. So I'm talking about regular citizens. But basically, we're not trained to do it, we're not authorized to do it, not deputized to do it, and we don't have the staff to do it.
Right. And you won't hinder them in any way.
No.
In other words, if there's paperwork, you're going to transfer it. You're going to tell them who you have.
Yes.
You're going to do the extent of what you're charged with doing.
Yeah, we're going to cooperate in all. Let's put it like this: we follow all local and state and federal laws. Like we follow the laws. We're not going above it, and we're not doing anything less than that. We follow it, and we have a lot of lawyers looking at this. The Massachusetts Sheriff's Association, the Massachusetts Chiefs of Police Association, they're on the same page about this as well.
But not 30 seconds before we go to this break, just let me ask you, what do you think of that list that came out? That the counties in Massachusetts are sanctuary jurisdictions, sanctuary cities. Rhode Island, we had 2 of them, Providence, Central Falls. Does that sit well with you? Does it strike you as correct or incorrect?
I think it's incorrect, because people who are, like sheriffs who are on that list, who are cooperating with ICE, sometimes even in other parts of the country where they have 287G contracts, they're on that list. People who are being sued are on this. The methodology was called into question, and the Department of Homeland Security, they weren't able to explain how the list was created.
But Mayor Wu was on that list, and we all know she's fighting with Homeland Security. And listen, there's questions as to whether Governor McKee and Mayor Smiley are doing enough here. So I understand there are intricacies of that. It's under review, but the list is the list. And what about this notion that, now that ICE is doing its raids, all of a sudden we have people protesting, trying to block them? I know the sheriff doesn't want to get involved, but do you see a need for local police maybe now to step it up a little bit and keep the peace? Not necessarily conduct the raid, but I'm here in case somebody goes up and approaches an ICE agent.
I was just at a Democrat city committee meeting last night talking to about almost 30 Democrats, and I told this group, and I've told many groups, I go around, I talk to a lot of groups, I tell them, don't ever get in ICE's way. Go ahead and record it. Put it on social media, put it on YouTube, exercise your First Amendment right, and do your protest, but do not get in their way. It's not going to go well for you.
All right. Sheriff, stay with us. We've got a few more things to talk about, including the Ash Street Jail, and you're installing air conditioning. So you're going to tell us where and who that's for when we come back on 10 News Conference.
This message comes from Greenlight. Ready to start talking to your kids about financial literacy? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app that teaches kids and teens how to earn, save, spend wisely, and invest with your guardrails in place. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Join millions of parents and kids building healthy financial habits together on Greenlight. Get started risk-free at greenlight.com/Wondery.
If you were fixing your bra straps, fussing with wires, or battling your bra during this podcast, stop right now. You'll want to hear this. Those bra problems, those problems you thought you had to live with, Third Love has solved them. Their bras make it easy to get what you want, whether it's ultimate cleavage, a smooth look, or stopping your shirt buttons from pulling. With over 60 sizes, including half cups you won't find anywhere else, you'll never be stuck between two sizes that don't fit. So stop settling for bad bras. Now's the time to treat yourself and get your problem solved. Save $15 on your first order with code podcast15 at thirdlove.com.
Continuing with Bristol County Sheriff Paul Heroux, just before we went to break, we're talking about, things have changed. I know certain police departments don't want to get involved with ICE. That's ICE, not us. However, now we have ICE raids and we have street protests coming up, people making the ICE agents making their life miserable. Do you see a need now for local police departments to maybe say, we'll take crowd control, we'll control the streets, you guys do what you have to do?
Yes, I do. And I think that police basically need to protect the protesters from themselves in a way, because the street protesters, if they get too close or they go too far and actually get in ICE's way of doing an arrest, they could also be arrested themselves and brought up on federal charges. And I don't want that to happen to anybody. So yeah, there is a role for police to do crowd control to keep the citizen protesters from getting themselves in trouble.
There's a little more too, because now this involves a stepped up cooperation between departments that haven't ordinarily cooperated with ICE, at least not on the retail level. All right, let's move, because there's other things to talk to you about, including the Ash Street Jail, which really you should give that to Steven Spielberg. And tell them to remake the Shawshank Redemption.
We're actually talking to a couple of studios that are interested in wanting to film there. One of them is The Walking Dead. So we're actually talking to them. Well, they might want to do something at the Ash Street Jail. You've heard it here first.
I've been to that facility, and on the first floor there's like little, they almost look like niches, right? It's old, it's past its prime. When are you going to close it?
So what I have to do first is put locks on doors and toilets and cells in the Dartmouth campus, because out of the 22 housing units we have in Dartmouth, 11 of them don't have locks on doors. It's crazy. It's a jail, I know. But we have to put toilets and cells and then locks on doors. And then I can bring over those 100 special inmates that have to be in a cell with a lock on a door. And then I can close the Ash Street Jail. But that's basically what it amounts to, is just putting locks on doors. And we don't have to do all 11 housing units. If I can just do probably about 3 or 4 housing units at most, we can close Ash Street. And we have a plan to do that, and we're working on it now.
Well, as much as money you're going to spend over there, nobody wants to make a movie there. It's the new one, Ash Street. We want to make the movie. Now, you told me you're going to put air conditioning in some of these housing units. Now, people watching at home say, you're going to give the inmates air conditioning? Why?
Well, there was air conditioning in some of the housing units under my predecessor, Tom Hodgson. In the 4 housing units at the mods and the medical unit, there was air conditioning there. So I'm not doing anything crazy. But the air conditioning in housing units was actually a request by some officers, because we have to think about this. The work conditions are the living conditions. You can't separate the two. And so the officers said, please give us air conditioning. It helps keep the tempers down, and it improves and when the tempers are down, there are fewer fights. So it helps with kind of the climate of both the inmates and then also the physical climate. And so we've done that in the Women's Center. We put the air conditioning in the Women's Center. We're working on a couple of the other housing units right now, some of the smaller ones. But the nice thing is, the taxpayers aren't paying for this. We actually are using inmate canteen money. So there was profit on inmate canteen, like when they buy Doritos and ramen and stuff. That accumulated to about $1.5 million, $1.6 million. So the money that the jail has taken before I got there, and since I got there as well, we're using that money to pay for air conditioning. But I'm not going to stop there. I'm also putting solar panels on the roof to help power it.
Okay.
So there's no cost to the taxpayers for this. And it makes for better work conditions for the employees, and it keeps the temperature down for the inmates, which results in fewer fights.
If you cool them down, you're right, it keeps the temperature down. You're saying it's money well spent. Now, you want to report some progress. You say your suicide rate is almost non-existent.
Yes, so we haven't had a suicide in almost 2.5 years. And there was a suicide every year prior to me getting there for at least 15 years. In 2016, there were 4 suicides. In other years, there were 1 or 2 suicides. So quite often, there were 2 suicides. And we had 1 suicide on my second day on the job before I was able to implement any changes. But in my first month, January 2023, I hired somebody named Lindsay Hayes. He's a national expert on suicide. He gave us 23 specific recommendations. We implemented those. Better screening when people are coming in, changing some of the risk factors within a cell ways people could hang themselves. And we haven't had a suicide in almost 2.5 years, which is the longest that the jail hasn't had a suicide in at least 15 years. Now, having said that, I can't promise to eliminate inmate suicide. We could have a suicide going on right now as I'm saying this to you. We have reduced the rate, but we cannot bring it to zero. Nobody can make that promise, but we have reduced the rate, though.
I just have about 30 seconds left. Listen, you have to deal with the labor unions. Your people are unionized. Where do you stand with that?
Yes.
About 30 seconds.
Yeah, so I meet with the big unions that we have, the NCEU union and the MCUFU, Mass Correctional Officer Federation Union, once a month. They give me ideas about things. Sometimes we implement them. I tell them things I want to change. So we have a good relationship. Sometimes it's a little bit testy, but we work really well together.
Well, I want you to call me when the movie is made. We're going to come out. Do you know what the plot is?
I don't know, actually. I'm not sure yet.
About a new sheriff in town, maybe?
We'll see.
Sheriff Paul Heroux, thanks for coming in, and good luck. We'll see you again.
Great, thanks.
That's 10 News Conference, your #1 longest-running political show in Southern New England. Reminder, watch all of our interviews on turnto10.com. You also listen on the radio on weekends, and I'll see you on the news at 6. Have a great weekend.
Ready to make a real impact every day? Join the Active Day Home Care team and help clients maintain their independence in the comfort of their own homes. Make a difference in someone's life as you provide essential daily assistance and protect their health and happiness. Earn up to $20 an hour and enjoy additional perks like optional daily pay, 401k, paid time off, ongoing educational training, and more. Join a team that values care, compassion, and your professional growth. Visit activeday.com to apply.